Let's talk about Eddington. This movie is directed by Ari Aster. It stars Joaquin Phoenix as Joe Cross, Pedro Pascal as Ted Garcia, Emma Stone as Louise Cross, and Austin Butler as Vernon Jefferson. I've been a huge fan of Ari Aster films for a long time now. I saw Hereditary in theaters when it first came out, and that completely changed my perspective on horror movies, obviously, but just filmmaking in general. As a newcomer, Ari Aster really started off with a bang. This is the fourth major feature film that Ari Aster has directed, and technique-wise, this film is so polished. I really think that up to this point, this is his masterpiece. Obviously, directing is just one part of it, but the cinematography, the lighting, the editing, all of these things combined made it into an excellent film. The plot itself was really unique and interesting, which I feel like is pretty hard to come by these days. This movie has 3 distinct acts, and in classic Ari Aster fashion, there's kind of a hard turn in genre in the middle of the film. This film is also very much a Western, much like No Country for Old Men is kind of a modern Western. This one fits that genre perfectly. I'm gonna dive into some spoilers here, so if you guys have not seen the film yet, be sure to skip to the end. This movie was actually hilarious. Much more than I anticipated. Ari Aster kind of incorporates comedy into some of his other films, but this one really had me laughing. Some of the things that I found funny in this film were Joe Cross being this big anti-vaxxer, contracting COVID, and then just walking around spreading it while nobody tells him anything. The dinner scene with Brian's family where he's talking about removing his whiteness. Ted's campaign commercial was insane. The Katy Perry song playing during what was one of the major confrontations in the film. At the end, the nurse cuddling with the mother-in-law right next to Joe Cross, and the MAGA influencer arc that Brian had were all just so funny and things that I did not expect to see in this film. On the other hand, this film was really scary, and if there's one thing that Ari Aster knows how to do, it is how to build extreme tension and keep your audience really uncomfortable. The assassination scene of Ted Garcia was so visceral and reminded me a lot of movies like Wind River and No Country for Old Men when it came to the sound design and the way that they portrayed these killings. The scene where Joe is running through Eddington at night being chased by Antifa soldiers was so anxiety inducing, and the camera work where they're following him around over his shoulder, kind of getting his perspective on what he's looking at and what he's doing was just excellent and did such a good job at building those horror elements. The other thing I really appreciate about Ari Aster is how detailed he is in his work. This spans all of his movies, but he's so attentive to everything that's going on in any particular frame in the movie. Because I'm familiar with his work, I found myself looking in the background of all of these shots and finding little details and Easter eggs that he intentionally left there. Some examples are the foreshadowing of Joe Cross getting stabbed in a puppet that his wife had made that had a knife in its forehead, or how he lets the audience unfold the story of these Antifa soldiers and how really they're being paid for and directed by the data company that wants this new data center built. There's also the symbolism of the name of the data center, Solid Gold Magikarp, where you can get into a crazy rabbit hole about what it means in regards to hyperrealism, which is something that Ari Aster was aiming to show in this film. Another example is Luis's sexual assault and how Ari allows the audience to connect the dots to find out that it was her dad that got her pregnant and forced an abortion. And of course, there are elements of the taking of native land in this film. Not only is it directly mentioned by Sarah during the protests, but also Joe Cross falling onto Geronimo's bones. There's just so much to unravel, and I don't think it's possible for anybody to watch this one time and figure out everything that Ari Aster is trying to say. This movie definitely gave me PTSD from the COVID era. I'm sure we all remember people on both sides of the aisle going absolutely crazy. On one side, you've got anti-maskers not caring about people's health, but then you've also got BLM protesters that aren't really helping the situation. The entire movie is filled with scenes of people consuming media from unreliable sources. You see a lot of allusion to conspiracy theories and misinformation. I will say that the film didn't necessarily choose a side. It kind of showed the bad parts of both perspectives, but I do think that everyone will have a differing opinion depending on their political stance. And finally, moving on to the end of the film, I do think that it wrapped up in a typical Ari Aster fashion, which is very bleak and hopeless. Joe Cross is handicapped for the rest of his life. The mother-in-law is the pseudo mayor now, who is bought out and influenced by the corporation that wanted to put this data center there in the first place. Louise ends up being pregnant with Vernon's baby. Just overall, a sad ending for all the characters, and nobody comes out on top, which is very similar to what it's like in real life for a lot of normal people like you or me. This might be Ari Aster's best work so far. It goes to show how much he's grown and matured as a filmmaker. He's slowly and surely becoming a true master in his craft. This movie is... Hello. This movie is really about division and people living in different realities where they have different sources of truth. It really emphasizes the inability of people on any side of this to reconnect or reach across the aisle to try and come to an agreement about anything. That all being said, I do not think that everybody is going to like this movie. As a fan of Ari Aster, I absolutely did and think it might be his best work so far. But the fact that there are people that are gonna totally hate this movie is fine too. I do think it's a little ironic that there's people online that are totally trying to shut down others' opinions about this film when that's kind of the whole point of this movie altogether. This movie definitely has me so excited for anything that Ari Aster works on in the future. He's already alluded to some ideas that he has in some of the interviews that he's conducted lately, and I will tell y'all that I will 1000% be seated for it.
Hey guys, Editor Wally here. Totally forgot to include a rating in this video, so just letting you know I rated this a 4.5 on Letterboxd. Okay, thanks, bye.
I really want to hear from those of you that may not have liked this movie so much. I know that there's people online that thought that this was a bit of a drag and they didn't get much from it. I want to know what people really disliked about this film. As always, I really appreciate anyone that watched this all the way through, and make sure that you argue with me in the comments.